Yeah, Med Decode. Welcome to Med Decode. And thank you for diving deep with us today.
It's great to be here.
So, today we are tackling a health myth that has, I think, haunted fitness trackers for what, over a decade now?
Oh, at least. The
Well,
10,000 steps a day rule.
exactly. For most people, that number just sounds exhausting, maybe unachievable, and frankly, a little paralyzing.
It is.
But today, we are putting that old rule completely aside because we have new landmark data that redefines the real golden step count needed to fight back against Alzheimer's-related cognitive decline.
And this is one of the most, I'd say, practical and encouraging studies we've seen in the field of aging.
Yeah.
The information we're extracting, it comes directly from the Harvard Aging Brain Study, or HEBS, and was just published in Nature Medicine.
So our mission for this deep dive is pretty focused then.
It is. We need to pinpoint the exact minimum steps that give you a measurable benefit, establish that optimal sweet spot for maximum protection, and, crucially, reveal the underlying biological mechanism. How does simply walking keep your brain structurally sound?
And the strength of these findings is so important because the term lifestyle study can sometimes make people, a little skeptical about reliability. What makes the HABS data so trustworthy?
It really comes down to methodology and duration. They tracked nearly 300 older adults with an age range from 50 all the way up to 90 years old.
Wow.
And they did this for a massive follow-up period of up to 14 years. But here's the critical detail, is how they measured activity.
Right. Not just asking people.
Exactly. They didn't just say, how often did you walk this week? They used objective, waist-mounted pedometers, and that eliminates the massive bias and error that comes from, shaky self-reported data. It makes these step counts highly reliable.
That kind of deep consistency in measurement is exactly what we need when you're dealing with the slow march of cognitive decline. Okay, so let's unpack the first major finding, because this powerful brain protection from walking is, well, surprisingly selective. It's not a universal benefit.
That's right. That's the first layer of insight here. Who benefits most? The protective effect of walking was specifically and significantly effective only for those participants who were already on the preclinical Alzheimer's trajectory.
Can you define that trajectory for us? Because when we talk about preclinical stages, I think people often assume they're already forgetting things, but that's not necessarily the case, is it?
Absolutely not. This stage is defined purely by molecular signs, often long before symptoms appear. The researchers, they identified this high-risk group based on their baseline levels of amyloid-beta.
At protein.
Exactly. AP protein accumulation in the brain. AP is one of the earliest known molecular hallmarks of Alzheimer's. So if you had high levels of AP, the signal that the pathological process has begun, then increasing your steps delivered massive protection against future decline.
So if AP is the molecular signpost for being high risk, what about the participants who were low risk, the ones with low baseline AP?
For that group, it was, well, cognitively speaking, it was a wash.
A wash, no effect at all.
The study found that higher activity levels had no additional protective effect on their cognitive trajectory. Of course, walking is wonderful for cardiovascular health, muscle maintenance, mood.
All the other good things.
All the other good things. But it didn't change the long-term cognitive outcome that is specifically driven by that acanthopathology.
That completely reframes the discussion then. We're moving from just general wellness advice to a targeted, highly effective disease modification strategy for people who know or suspect they're at high molecular risk.
Yes.
So if you have a family history, or maybe you've had some biomarker testing, this data is revolutionary. It tells you exactly how to intervene without a prescription.
It's highly empowering, and the best part is just how achievable the required intervention really is.
Right. Let's get to those numbers. Everyone's bracing for the 10,000 steps, but what's the absolute minimum dose that gave people a measurable win?
The initial goal is incredibly encouraging, especially for anyone who currently classifies as sedentary. They found that simply increasing activity to the low activity bracket,
Which is how many steps?
which translates to just 3,000 to 5,000 steps per day, and that alone slowed cognitive decline by an average of 3 years.
3,000 to 5,000. That's almost shocking. In Mandarin, we'd say.
Hello.
It is. So that means just adding a dedicated 20-minute walk or maybe parking further away could buy you 3 years of cognitive health. That's a huge return on a minimal investment.
It is a massive win. That 3-year delay represents a statistically significant slowing of the rate of decline compared to the completely inactive group. But if you push just a little further, the benefits, they leap exponentially.
Okay, let's look at the optimal zone. If 5,000 steps is good, Does reaching 10,000 steps, say, double the protection?
Not quite. The maximum reward, what we're calling the golden zone, was found in the moderate activity group, and that's defined as 5,001 to 7,500 steps per day.
So a bit more of a push.
A bit more. And this group didn't just slow decline by 3 years, they dramatically slowed it by an average of 7 years. Over the follow-up period, they showed 54% less cognitive decline compared to the inactive high-risk participants.
7 years. 7 years of functional memory and independence bought back by achieving, what, 7,500 steps? That's still miles away from that intimidating 10,000-step myth.
And this brings us to one of the most fascinating points, especially for people who are already very active. The researchers observed a clear and critical ceiling effect.
Wait a minute. So if I'm a high-risk individual and I'm fit enough to easily hit 10,000 steps or even more, why wouldn't that extra effort give me more protection? What stops the cognitive benefit around 7,500 steps?
It suggests that the biological mechanism that's triggered by physical activity, that neuroprotective effect, it reaches its saturation point, or its maximum effectiveness, right inside that 5,000 to 7,500 step window.
So going beyond that.
Walking more than 7,500 steps per day provided no further measurable slowing of cognitive decline, at least in this specific context.
That's a crucial economic insight for the body, then. It tells you exactly how much effort you need to expend to maximize the anti-Alzheimer's benefit. You get the biggest bang for your buck right there in the moderate zone.
Exactly. You don't need to stress over doubling the goal if your goal is solely cognitive protection. It promotes efficiency, which is vital for older adults when you're considering fatigue and injury risk. This data gives you a targeted, specific goal rather than just a vague aspiration.
This leads us naturally into, I think, the most compelling part of this research. We know how many steps work and for whom, but we have to answer the central question: how does walking provide this protection? I think a lot of people would assume that exercise must be dissolving those toxic amyloid-beta plaques. Is that what the brain scans showed?
This is where the finding becomes genuinely counterintuitive. The analysis of the brain scans revealed that higher physical activity did not slow the accumulation of amyloid-beta.
At all.
Amyloid continued its relentless upward trajectory, regardless of whether participants walked 3,000 steps or 10,000 steps.
So the trigger, the match that starts the fire, is still accumulating, whether you walk or not. If exercise doesn't stop the trigger, how in the world does it stop the resulting cognitive damage?
It targets the true source of neuronal death. It targets the bullet, as you called it earlier. Cognitive decline is ultimately driven by the accumulation of tau protein, which twists into neurofibrillary tangles inside neurons, disrupting communication and killing the cells.
And the study found?
The study found that higher physical activity specifically and significantly slowed the buildup of tau protein.
And where was this critical tau slowdown happening in a specific part of the brain?
It was most pronounced in the inferior temporal cortex, or ITC. And this region is absolutely crucial because it plays a primary role in high-level visual recognition and memory consolidation.
So that's the memory hardware.
Exactly. When tau tangles up the ITC, that's when people start losing the ability to identify objects or form new memories effectively. By slowing tau in the ITC, walking directly protects that memory hardware.
So, if AU is the early signal, the toxic stressor, and tau is the actual weapon that demolishes memory, exercise is acting as a powerful molecular shield that just intercepts the damage. It breaks that pathological chain of events.
That's precisely right. The researchers were even able to quantify this relationship. The slower tau accumulation significantly mediated, I think it was 84% mediated, in fact, the association with slower cognitive decline.
That's a huge link.
It is. Walking doesn't stop the initial injury from AU, but it vastly reduces the extent of the damage from tau.
We also need to touch on the dual benefits you mentioned earlier. The study looked not just at cognitive scores, but at functional independence as well.
Yes. They measured functional decline using metrics like the Clinical Dementia Rating Sum of Boxes, or CDR-SOB, which assesses a person's ability to handle daily life.
Things like managing finances, hobbies.
Right, maintaining hobbies and managing household affairs. And while tau suppression was the dominant factor for the cognitive scores, it only partially mediated about 40% of the slowing of functional decline.
Okay, so what does that tell us about the other 60%?
It strongly suggests that walking provides other systemic benefits that aren't related to tau. Things like reduced frailty, improved vascular health, better sleep, or reduced inflammation.
All of which are critical for staying independent.
Exactly. These factors are critical for maintaining that overall resilience and functional independence that keep people autonomous for longer, even as their cognitive scores might be slowly ticking down.
And that brings us to the real-world significance of that 7-year delay. Let's translate 7 years into terms of lived experience for our listener.
It's profound. The researchers, they modeled the trajectory for both groups. The high-risk inactive individuals, those walking 3,000 steps or less, were estimated to hit the critical clinical cognitive impairment threshold in about 6.5 years from the start of the study.
6.5 years to major impairment. And the moderate activity group, that sweet spot of 5,001 to 7,500 steps.
They were estimated to reach that same impairment threshold in 13.6 years.
So you're more than doubling the time.
You're buying the listener an additional 7 years of their life where they retain independence, autonomy, and function. And that time, it translates into years of enjoying grandchildren, managing their own affairs, and significantly reducing the emotional and financial burden that dementia places on families.
That is the ultimate payoff. And this entire actionable strategy, it relies on numbers we can all track instantly on our wearable devices, thanks to the objective measurements they used in the HABS study.
It translates the research directly into public health advice. You don't need a specialist. You just need a phone app or a fitness tracker to start intervening right now.
So looking forward, how should this behavioral intervention be integrated with the pharmaceutical approaches that are starting to emerge, like the anti-out drug therapies we hear about?
The consensus among scientists is, well, pretty clear. Future AD prevention trials should employ a two-pronged strategy. You don't choose between lifestyle and drugs.
You do both.
The optimal strategy is to combine them. You use the emerging anti-AR drugs to target the trigger, clearing or slowing the accumulation of amyloid-beta, and simultaneously, you use the lifestyle intervention, the powerful 5,001 to 7,500 steps, to suppress tau, which is the immediate cause of cognitive failure.
It's a beautifully powerful, comprehensive plan. Stop the fire starter with drugs and suppress the spreading wildfire with exercise.
Precisely. This combined approach is likely the most potent way we have to truly halt or severely delay preclinical AD progression.
So to summarize this entire deep dive, the main highly achievable takeaway is simple and it's encouraging. You don't need to stress over the daunting 10,000 steps to protect your memory. Just aim for that 5,000 to 7,500 steps sweet spot. And this is particularly crucial if you are in that high-risk A-positive category.
And I think this research offers a crucial shift in perspective that all listeners should really mull over. If physical activity specifically slows tau accumulation after ARI has already started building up, which means the disease process has begun, does this suggest that exercise acts as a crucial neurorescue strategy?
So it's not just preventative.
It's not just preventative. It's an active tool we can use to stabilize the brain even when pathology is underway. And this realization that we can actively modify disease progression through accessible behavior is, for me, the most exciting takeaway of all.
And that's a wrap on this episode of MedDecode. I really appreciate you joining me today. If something we talked about sparked your interest, or if there's a medical term that's been bugging you, let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this, be a pal and share it with a friend. We'll catch you on the next one.